long breath out. And relax. And be prepared to access the deep well that's within each one of us. Well of history, our ancestors, and our own experience in deep knowing. Deep breath in and long breath out.
So the way that I like to open a circle and create sacred space is by calling our name into the circle. And women have been gathering together in circle for thousands of years, as we all know. And one of the traditions that I learned when I first started opening up to sacred space and spirituality and creating ritual was something called calling in our names. And I think I've heard that women used to sing their names, and so you're welcome to sing your name if you would like to. But I'm going to use these tuning forks, which I've been using for many years, for sound therapy. I have a C and a G note, and when you tap them together, you want to hold them by the stems, right here, and you get a perfect fifth. And as I've been working with these, I discovered later that this perfect fifth is the sound that the god Shiva used to call the goddess Shakti into the dance of life. So I was very happy that I was using these at my goddess parties. So what I'm going to invite us to do is to use the tuning forks and call our names into the circle. And if you want to call in your mothers, grandmothers, sisters, women who have inspired you, anyone from your line, even fathers, all are invited. These are the people who have been with us and who have supported us and who have had an impact on our lives. And because of them, we're here today in the circle. So feel free to call in any being, any of your beloveds. So I'll begin. I'm Elizabeth, and I'm the daughter of Arlene, granddaughter of Lena, great-granddaughter of Sarah, sister of Susan and aunt of Olivia, and I call of myself into the circle.
I'm Lara, goddaughter of Sally, daughter of Marjorie and David, sister of Victoria, Emily, and Rachel, and I call myself into the circle.
Welcome, 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 Lara.
Thank you.
I'm Serpentessa, and I call in my ancestors that are my snakes. They go back and back and back and back and back. Welcome, Serpentessa.
ALisa, daughter of Virginia, granddaughter of Grace and Harriet and Lulu, sister of Wendy and Alana, mother of Shanoa and Sean. I call in my ancestors, my family, and all of the beloveds that I work with and through in this lifetime. I call myself into the circle.
Welcome, welcome.
Welcome, Lisa.
I'm Margaret, daughter of Dorothy, granddaughter of Anna and Margaret, great-granddaughter of Laura and Helen, whose real name was Maria Magdalena Nofziger Heinrichsmeyer, but they called her Helen. And my other great-grandmothers were Mary and Margaret. And I invite my aunt, my mother's sister, Mary Beth, was my fairy godmother, and my daughters, Sarah and Joanna. And I invite myself into the circle.
Welcome.
Welcome.
I'm Kiana, daughter of Delisai, granddaughter of Josefa, sister of Tanya. I call all my ancestors into this circle. I call my brother into this circle, Eric, and I call Wild Woman, Mother Earth, here into the circle.
Welcome.
Welcome, Kiana. Many know me as Twinkle. My name is Evelyn Marie, daughter of Evelyn Faye, granddaughter of Evelyn Hope and Anna Marie, niece of Annette and Carol and Anne, and mother to Dylan, Morgan, Riley, and Orion. And I call myself into the circle.
Welcome.
Welcome.
I remember that from the Egyptian temples when the men started low and the women went high and we made one note together. I'm Dale and I'm the daughter of Eleanor and I'm the granddaughter of Eva and Lillian and also of my line through my stepfather Anne. And I am the daughter of Alan and my other father Dan, and I am the mother of Danny. And I call into the circle all my siblings as well as all my sisters of the heart and all that walk before me, that come before me, all of the goddesses about which I speak and who I love and who infuse my body and being every day. I join this circle with tremendous gratitude. Thank you.
Welcome. So, another way of creating sacred space is to set up an altar, and we have our altar somewhat set up, but I know that we asked everyone here to bring something with them that they wanted to add to the altar. And so we can go around and share our pieces and find a spot for them on the table and say why they're important to us and why we've brought them with us. So I brought a little goddess contemplating the light, and this reminds me to be at peace with myself, and it reminds me of my inner light, and it helps to shed light on whatever we're going to talk about today. So this is my offering to our altar.
These are Rudraksha beads I've had since I was a little girl. My parents were, their spiritual tradition was transcendental meditation, and they had a lot of friends in the TM movement, and one of those gave me these beautiful rose quartz Rudraksha beads. My understanding is that when you wear them around your neck, they're supposed to keep your energy in your head, which I don't think is very goddess-oriented because we want our whole body, so I very rarely use them around my neck. But I do often hold them because the rose quartz is very healing to my heart chakra, which is still healing from my divorce last year. So I brought them with me to share today. Now I will be keeping them, but I'm going to definitely put them on the altar. And I also brought this lovely, I'm going to hold it up for the camera, and then I will show it to everyone else. A friend of mine gave me this. She got it in New Mexico. I believe it was made by indigenous people. I don't know anything about it because it was a gift, and I didn't get one of those wonderful cards that tells you what it is. But it is of a turtle with the earth on her back, which is a creation myth or creation story. And I have an affinity with turtles. It was my first nickname was Turtle, only because I was wearing a green turtleneck. But when I found out turtles meant mother, this spoke to me as well. So I'm going to leave this on the altar as a representation of me.
Well, since Turtle is holding the earth, I'm sure that Turtle will welcome Snake, since Snake lives belly to belly with the earth. This is a small snakeskin candle holder, and I bring it also to help us remember that we have the power of transformation. Thank you, Laura. Pass these down.
Can I say something about your bowl?
Of course.
Well, what it looks like to me is a huichol art, which are native people that have been very secluded in Mexico. They do ceremonies, sacred ceremonies, and then after they go through their ceremony, they make art, and I think that's what it is.
Wonderful.
It's great to have them
Wonderful
here.
to know.
So I brought first this beautiful symbol of the Red Tent Temple, which Isidora's been making her mother's been making them to be able to help with the documentary that she's making. But I just love it because it has the little crescent moon, and it's reminding us of a time when we had temples that honored the goddess and honored women. And this is my gift to you for having us here on the show. I'm so appreciative that will stay. And there's many goddesses and things and objects that could have come, but I decided what I really wanted here was to bring a Sheila Nagig, because she's just so outrageous. And another name for her is some of the older myths in Japan. There's one of her being Babo. And this is the open yoni, the doorway to life and creation. And she was, they don't really know. Sometimes people say that she is from, she kind of needs a backup. Maybe the temple can back her up there. That she was from the 11th, 12th century in Britain and Ireland, but then maybe earlier than that in Spain and France. But then there's also ideas that she was way earlier than that with the mother line religions and spirituality that was there predating Christianity. And what I love is that she's an old woman, and she's so outrageous here with this open because it's sort of like, I am life, I am death, I am the way through, I am the way out. And I thought she deserved to be here today.
Thank you.
And she's smiling.
And she's smiling
through it all.
She's got a secret.
I brought this another little contemplative woman figure. She was created by a student in a class. There's a Unitarian Universalist curriculum called Cakes for the Queen of Heaven that has been an introduction to women about women's spirituality, women's spiritual history, that has been very exciting and life-changing for a lot of women. And one of the exercises is to take a handful of pottery clay and make something that you feel something about. And this was made by one of the students in one of my first classes, and I just have always loved it. She gave it to me, and my daughter fired it for me. And I just love the feel of it. It reminds me of the presence of the goddess just holding the light. And I've used this for years when I'm thinking about someone in particular, someone that's having a bad time for whatever reason, or a good time. When I was working, I kept it on my desk, and I would just keep the flame burning for the day, when I was really keeping somebody in my heart and keeping them in the light. So that's what this is. So this will be for our circle here today. doing the work of the goddess in a much wider context.
Thank you.
And I also have a figure that was given to me some years ago. This is called a Maze Mother, and it came from a field in Ohio. It was found by a friend of mine who grew up in Ohio and spent a lot of his childhood just out browsing around, looking for arrowheads and things. But he found several of these, and they are very, very old. They used to be, they think that they were buried as a kind of fertility object to encourage the corn, encourage the crops. But it's just such an amazing figure, and the oldness of it is just amazing to me, to hold this figure that someone made literally probably 10,000 years ago. And it was also given to me as a peace offering from somebody that had been, shall we say, negative about some of the work that we were doing. And we discussed it several times, and he brought this to me one day and said, I think your group will enjoy this. So it has a lot of meaning. I would love to pass this around if everybody would like to just hold it. And it's just and then we'll put it up.
Oh, she's beautiful.
Yeah,
That little minimal face is just...
Well, I was thinking about what to bring, and I was sitting in meditation, and it just came like my guides. Wild Woman is primarily who comes through. It's like, we're going to draw them a picture, And so yesterday morning in my practice, I sat and it just watched it come out, and I'm like, oh, there's Wild Woman, and I want to share the story of a dragonfly that appeared in the morning. Yesterday on the way here, as a dragonfly appeared on my shirt as I was sitting waiting, and then when I got to her place, there was a dragonfly on the fridge. So there's also a symbol I always think of ALisa with dragonfly. So it's like, I just think it's really amazing. I draw it and then dragonfly appears, and so this is what I'd like to share on the altar. I drew it right in front of my altar in space, and then. This here is just, I was on the way, and there's this woman that had this little table of stuff, and she just had this brightness to her. You could see that kind of that mirror of the goddesses there. And I saw, and then she was looking, and I asked her about the flowers. She goes, yeah, just make a donation. And so it just felt like it was just a lovely thing to bring. And so this from the New York City goddess gifted it to us.
Thank you. Do you want to advance? You were reading my mind when you said that we could touch you.
Do you know on Easter Island they have these gigantic heads, and they've been doing archaeology and going down underneath them, and they have full bodies that were not known.
Oh.
And they're huge. They just go down into the earth, and they don't know whether they just got covered or whether they were purposefully buried way under the ground.
That's stunning.
Wow.
All those heads on Easter Island.
Yeah.
I know they're huge heads, so there's huge bodies now. Like
My goodness.
We all gasped when we saw this. It's got that much power to it, doesn't it? And I spent a lot of time in Ohio lately in the caves out there, and that's very amazing out there. Yeah. So thank you so much for bringing her. Wow. Can she be felt? What a gift. Thank you. I'll place her near your...
So, I brought a couple things. I brought a bookmark, my heart. This, you can't really see it, but there's spirals, and it's a heart, and there's plants, and diamonds, diamond-like. And I discovered the goddess in a book. And many books. Kiana, you've been to my home. Many books. And I just thought, I'll bring this to honor all of the people, all the women. I mean, Merlin Stone and Eleanor Gaydon. So many. Max Dashu, Carol Chris. Just women who have done the research for us, who just spent decades of bringing us the information so that we have backup. And when we say, I'm going to the goddess circle, because there's still a stigma about it. We're very accepting now. Society is very, it leans towards being very accepting and open-minded. And I hope it continues to be that way, but we have such a deep history. So I'm bringing this bookmark for that, just to represent all of the women who've contributed to this movement and those who are still contributing to the movement with their literature and their research and their time. And I have brought this this is sea glass, and it's made on the island of Monhegan in Maine, where the fairies roam free. And it's one of the first places that I really felt safe to connect with that realm and with myself, and what's inside of me was able to just surround me. It was amazing. So I bring that today to the table.
I brought a picture of my daughter Danny. And of course I have my own. Danny calls me to be the most soul aligned I can possibly be, because that's the contract I have with her on a soul level. And I bring her here to represent all children on the earth at this moment, all blessed, exquisite children from every culture around the world. May we co-create a world that holds them and nurtures them and loves them and guides them into a way of being in their soul selves. We can create a world of peace. And we do it by making this a place where the children never have to forget who they are, their divinity, their wisdom.
Oh, it's beautiful. Thank you.
I just had a dream about you and Dan.
Dreams are very, very important, very rich world. Yes, please tell me. Thank you.
The goddess revealed herself to me when I was in my very early 20s when I bought this necklace. I actually bought it because I thought it was a beautiful representation of a female form who's not a skinny waif. And so that's why I bought it. And also it was by a jewelry designer that I loved. So it was a very kind of materialistic, but at the same time a calling. And as I wore it, people started saying, "Oh, that's a fertility goddess." And so I would hear that all the time. And so I started really contemplating what that was for me. And I used to lie in my bed at night and think like, "Oh, I think I'm like the great granddaughter of Aphrodite." Like I literally would have these private conversations with myself and not share them with anybody. And then as I evolved and I got into spiritual work and ritual work, and I came to understand the goddess for me, or the way that I like to explain my feelings about the goddess, is that I see her as a threefold essence, or energy. First of all, if we contemplate God as this masculine energy, or God is all that is, then God is also feminine. And so there's the feminine aspect of the goddess, which is in our higher selves, and in our nurturing ability, and in our beauty, and in our love, and just the kind of typical or stereotypical qualities of the feminine, and as a source to connect to for that inspiration. I also think of all the mythological stories of goddesses from all over the world, and use those archetypal stories to help tell my own story, or be able to see a mirror reflection of my own story within those. And then the core part of it for me, the third element for me, is that I am a woman and the spark of life is within me, and that spark of life is divine. And so I am the feminine embodiment of the goddess on earth. And that's how I feel about the goddess. And that's why every woman, girl, child, female child, dog, cat, whatever it is, if it's female, I call it goddess. I'm like, "Hi, goddess," and because to me that's what they represent.
I would love to speak to this. When I think of you, Elizabeth, I definitely think of love. And so I want to say that when the question sort of bodes into a singular entity, goddess, it's not plural. But when science is looking at where life comes from, what's the smallest little particle of life? And they think they have it, like, okay, this is it. We found the smallest part. And then lo and behold, it breaks down into something more smaller and behaves outside of those laws. And so the particles of life that are the creation and the living and the destruction and the rebirth are in everything. Like right now, everything, the table, whoever sewed this, and our beating hearts and our breath and life and plants. And so that is not singular, that's in every single everything where creation lives. And so that's where that divinity or that the goddess is life throughout everything, and the creative matrix. And so I think it's like she has thousands of faces and thousands of names, and can't ever be told, and is this complete mystery. And we want to, in our linear rational minds, we want to understand something, and we've externalized the divine. And to honor the goddess, to honor what it means to have that feminine or that creatrix matrix, it's in everyone. We lived in the amniotic seawater. We grew in places that nothing could have constructed us. And so, she's been so hidden and so taken away. And now it's this memory in our cells. And I kind of think of it like a glass mirror, the reflecting, that life and the universe is reflecting to us who we are, but it got shattered into just the teeniest little pieces everywhere. And everywhere we look when we wake up to her, we can look into it every day, every moment. That beauty is so astounding and so pervasive that when we finally recognize it, it heals us, because we realize that we've never been away from anything in this lifetime. We don't have to go through this feeling of waiting till the end of our life when we do good deeds to meet our maker. This is like, it's eternal and happening all the time. And so, we see ourselves in all the stories and all the archetypes and all of the little bits in this wholeness that is holy. And it's it's courageous to really come back to life, being from that birth, life and death and rebirth experience.
Beautiful.
I really resonate with that, and probably in this journey with the goddess, for me, originally it was as a term, a word that came that I really didn't like at all, because I thought, oh, what's the point? It's neither male nor female, but you see, I was still talking about some sort of concept. And when the whole goddess energy was coming into my field, it came silently. I got my hands down here because it was down here. It wasn't up here. It came up. This word wouldn't go away. This goddess word, experience, breath. And so I began to study the authors that you mentioned. And I'm so glad you gave them homage.
Yes,
I'm really glad about that. Now, because of that journey, and I believe that there is a great value to doing the studying and the learning, because our minds are great receptacles, and there's a lot of stuff in there that if you can put fresh stuff in, it can open up all kinds of doors. So this experience now of goddess for me, and you had the dream about the little girl that's chasing me around while I'm taking care of my daughter, and we sensed that girl is me. I knew it as soon as you said it. I'm breathing. I can't believe I'm alive. I can't believe I'm here. I'm here. And the goddess for me is, what is this breath? What is this moment? What is the desire? What's the desire? What's wanting to just be alive in this moment, connected to that girl self that hadn't gone into any kind of programming yet, and that is still so alive in me. For me, in every moment, right now in my life, that is what the goddess is. And that is also what I want for everybody else and everything else is that breath of creation in the moment.
I would echo that as well, ALisa, when you speak of the matrix, the girl who is yet to be programmed. The goddess is where the past and the present and the future meet. And for me. And so there's such strength in that, because what it can mean is that when we've been programmed in a way that has led to us making decisions that are not to our benefit, or when we've had experiences that have broken us, harmed us, we can go to that girl, that place, that space and time that exists right now, and we can hold her, and we can reprogram her to a place where she was untouched, and move forward into the future, which is also here right now, and create from that space what we want. We can, Yoni, we can heal our bodies. Like, this is where the sort of scientific side of the books resonated with me, the application of that knowledge and sharing it with other women, the experiences. Once we start talking about our experiences in circle like this, and in the larger groups, such as what you put on, ALisa, the gatherings, we find that our stories, they meld. They're all woven together in tapestry like this. And we have strength in numbers. We have power to be in circle, to learn from each other, and to take that inside and be with ourselves. So for me, the goddess opened the doorway for me to be with myself and enjoy my company. Yeah.
I want to respond to the use of the word power, which I found is a very important word to me when talking about the goddess. I did not start to feel my own power as a woman until I recognized goddess as divinity. I saw divinity as being something that was a male concept, and I was not able to connect to it. And I didn't realize that until I was finally connected to it. I was a feminist when I was in college, but we read so much about women's oppression, and it added to my depression at that time and my deep sadness and grief at what women have experienced and are still experiencing in so many cultures and in our own. And I wanted power is what I wanted. I wanted empowerment and the feeling that I could access power, and I did not see any really profound female power around me, and when in the reality around me. So when I saw Goddess, which came to me from a book, A Woman's Worth by Marianne Williamson, was the first goddess book I read, and I read it 100 times, and I just drank it in. And when I saw goddess in myself, I realized I had all the access that I could possibly want for power. And when I say power, people can be polarized by that because they're fearful of the idea of worldly power, but I don't think that spiritual and worldly power should be different. I really think that my ideal would be they should be the same.
I'm glad you brought up power, because it's the difference is there's power over, which I'm not interested in, and then there's power that's back to that breath, that's back to that, we're alive. We are the creator and the created. We are becoming incomplete at the same time, and it's the power is that which you can only, if you were to think on it further, just wish for everybody else. It's just an automatic thing. Life wants to live. Back to particulates. Life wants to live. It just, and when we're connected with that, and then that is a power, and it's the power of life and creation, and we wish it for all. So just a difference in what power is. It's not power over.
I remember when I was a little girl, when I was playing outdoors in nature, felt I was a mermaid. That was just the most amazing. I didn't have a word for goddess because I was in Catholic school at the time, but it was just an amazing feeling. And, wanting to be a dryad, a tree nymph, climbing trees. And so I think I also had that feeling of wanting to be goddess, and yet I also felt guided. And this is one thing the Catholic faith did give me, along with the baggage. I'm not want to talk about the baggage, but it gave me the willingness to suspend disbelief. Because here in my mind I'm going, well, how did it all begin? Well, how did God start? How was he born, And so but I was willing to suspend disbelief and just believe in the impossible. And so through all those experiences as a young girl, I felt guided and didn't have a name until later on, and I believe that Goddess is Mother Earth, because I believe that she is we and we are she, and she is the creatrix, and she wants us to remember and reclaim that we are creatrixes, that she's not the only creatrix in the garden here. Everyone are the creatrixes, and anyway, that's my idea of goddess, and it just fills me with such joy to be alive. And with that,
I love that you brought up mermaids. I love mermaids, and since I've raised a daughter, and you're all familiar with girls in princess costumes, I get really excited because they're watching all these shows, and I don't care about rewriting the myths right now, though the fairy tales. Let's just get into what they love. They put on the princess costume, and everything revolves around that. This is my life. This is my story. This is who I am, and they're so full of joy. And I'm like, keep that. Just keep that. And that's why they put on the dress. That's why they want that costume for that magic, and it's true, that magic.
I'm going to just slip in here. So I was at the Gina Davis Institute for Gender and Media, and so they have the filmmakers and talking about PBS, and what they were saying was that young girls will watch everything. And so the TV producer says, well, if they watch everything, let's just produce it for boys, because boys have a more stigma for watching things that were more, feminine. And so now that they've been putting more things on that are more value-centered and heart-centered, they're finding that boys are watching it. Well, boys will watch the programming, but they just won't buy the things. So when it goes into the store, like if there's anything of the program, the boys won't buy those because they don't want to be seen as having those things, but they will watch those programs. But the girls sort of like embraced the whole thing.
That's fascinating.
I thought that was fascinating.
Yes.
Before we go too much into consumer, which is a fascinating topic in and of itself, I did want to come back to Kiana because I could see that she had a strong energy reaction to what Serpentessa said.
Well, when you're talking about that the goddess doesn't just have it, it's like we are that. I think it just resonates for me that the goddess meant that I am a part of that, meant that having my goodness, and then when you're talking about that little girl, for me it was getting to reclaim that little girl that felt ashamed, that didn't feel clean, that it grew up with the patriarchy of this is God watching over you and watching every move and what's going to go wrong. And I would find my escape in encyclopedias and look for all the mythology parts in the encyclopedia. And meanwhile, have my hand on nature because that was considered a second book you could read about God or nature on the Sabbath. And so I would be hiding the mythology story and just through these goddesses, get to have this hope of living this larger life, of being able to have those sense of role models in these goddesses, and there's that stirring of that, and later on is that sense of I'm made in God's image. I grew up with this very masculine concept of God, and as this kind of judge, and there's all this shame of everything's my fault, and being able to look into mythology and these stories, I had this sense of hope of looking at what these women were doing, and it was actually Wild Woman was already there then because it was Diana, this being able to be in the hunt and be strong and be stronger than men. It was just as a sense of, that led me there. And then eventually I started gravitating to more women's things and goddess things. And I went through with Hamitra Creecraft had this Butte and Sue King had this wonderful women's program. And just getting a sense of getting to see goddess in everybody, and know that it's the getting to know what the feminine is by a feminine sense of God, that it's not just the doings, that there's this place you can relax into a being where you don't have to have all the answers, but it's a feeling and it's this flow. So for me, it's a way to have that sense of I am the sacred, and remember that every woman I see has that sacred. And furthermore, to be able to look at my son and say, there is that also within him. So I feel like that's that. It's so vast that, you know, you could just go on and remember what is the goddess. You know, you could start at a point, and each one of us have had all these beautiful points about who the goddess is, and it's a personal experience, you know, and, you know, yeah.
I just want to respond to what you were saying, what Elizabeth said about, well, at first this just feels like a feast. This is so exciting to just sort of hear all these wonderful affirmations of the goddess in every respect, you know, the sort of the earth and the role models. But the idea of seeing divinity, the feminine divine in all women, and I'm thinking also men, some men, not all men, but and it's sort of sad that there are a lot of men that wouldn't welcome being claimed as a sort of personification of the goddess. But I just think that's an important piece too. And, you know, our sons, my grandson, I have a grandson who is just, you know, the world, life for me. So I think that's an important piece. And I also just want to hold up also the different faces, the different personifications of the goddess that different women resonate to different ones, obviously, but it's so meaningful, so energizing to have that figure in yourself, in your mind. I mean, that's I wear this Kali necklace just because she's such an amazing presence, and I love that this is a beautiful little abstract figure of Kali, and people say, "Oh, isn't that lovely?" And I think, "Oh, if you only knew," because I'm thinking of the Kali with the swords and the necklace of skulls. So the personification of the goddess is just huge for women, and I love that.
Well, we really truly are living in a wonderful time with all of the research that's been done. One of the books that was seminal for me was the archaeologist Maria Gambudis, Language of the Goddess. To see that how many, my body is the temple of my soul, the temple of your soul is your body, and yet we couldn't be any more different physically, and it's wonderful because there is so many essences and so many possibilities to who we are. And so I think we sometimes resonate, and this is what I wanted to tie it into your thought, Margaret, to different aspects of goddess, because at different times in our life we're working something out. And so we need, like I was saying, I had said to you at one point, I resonated with Medusa when I needed to understand what rage, when I was working out rage, and it's easier to work it out in the bigger world, but then it's much harder in your core relationships to own when you're rageful, and to disentangle it from realizing that anger is there as a valid emotion, and yet what it's to be able to create regenerative action from that energy that's stirred up, not to kind of like, and I was big with the sword, and so I think that we find those aspects, and yet, and then to see Maria Gambudis' work, and to have this, and to have compassion for our mothers and our grandmothers, and for the men who didn't realize and didn't have these images to look at and to see, or that whole period where it wasn't available.
Yeah. I'm so big on the my sense of it is, and well, who knows for sure, but my sense of it is that we are many times on the planet, and so as far as I'm concerned, I was probably on the Council of Geneva and wrote the most vehement things against women. Like, to me, the jig is up. I've been on both sides. I've been the man. I've been the witch hunts. I've been burning them. I've been burned.
So here we are now. I happen to be walking around in a physical form, but the other aspects of myself and us are walking around in the male form. And I so much want to invite the men into this journey. And I think that in that invitation, part of it is also to be very firm on certain things, very clear on, that which is not part of love and life and is harming the planet, children, everything else. No, you're not invited to this party. You're going to sit way out there on the rim, and you're not coming anywhere near it until you create your own house of mirrors to realize that you actually are part of divinity, and that all of that negativity you've been really making much larger needs to come into balance so that you can enter back home, which is the balance of the masculine and the feminine, and where the goddess is thriving and birthing and loving and sharing, and that reciprocal back and forth with the masculine and feminine, because we are all aspects, all of us. So I just definitely want to call in the masculine side within myself and within and without. Yeah.
I want to speak to masculine because when I was growing up, I thought it was the worst thing ever to be a girl. It took all of this work for me to embrace the feminine. Goddess, I needed the goddess for that, and I believe it's essential for us to take it and hold that in order for that healing to happen for men, for our sons, for our husbands to take pride in being born out of a woman and not carry that shame of here I am born out of that. They're not going to know it until we carry it, because when we have it in our bones and when we feel that, when we go, this is the joy of being the vessel of the goddess, then other people look at it and go, oh, wow, look at that. It's not the same as
we carry it throughout our life.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that they can see an older woman,
Yes.
that we got it going on, and stand up and notice us, and we'll recognize you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Give me
good.
the
Sheila's
yes,
here.
that's-
Yeah. Thank you, Sheila.
That a lot of them aren't ready for her though.
That's all right. We're bringing her in anyway.
She's in this.
She's on the
space,
doorway
and
of the
that is
churches.
fun.
I was That's true.
What?
It is true. She is on the doorway of the churches.
Yes.
When I did my goddess card reading yesterday and put my depiction of Sheila Necking up on my desk, which doubles as my altar, I was just waiting for my boyfriend to see it. I could not wait to have that conversation. He has a very nurturing side. One of the things I fell in love with is he's a wonderful father to his boys and really is as attentive to them as a mother can be, which, as you know, is a very high compliment. So but he still is learning about the goddess, and different cards have elicited a lot of different dialogue. And when he saw it, he just stared at it and said, "What is that? Who is that?" And my first answer was, "Do you know that image used to be on the doorways of churches? Can you imagine a world in which that image was on the doorway? And it's a sacred passage into this world, so why not?" And he was just like, "Okay, that's great." Like,
And they used to kiss it. They used to kiss it like they do with the mezuzah on the door, like right in the yoni and right back to their mouths.
What you said, Laura, can you imagine it? It really, can you imagine a world like that? It really is a remembrance, because there was a world like that, and it was the goddess culture, and it was a time when women, they led, and they led with compassion, and they led with kindness, and they led with community in mind. No one starved. No one was taken to war the way we take our brothers and sisters to war. When someone was sick, they were helped. They were healed. They weren't thought of as a burden. They were nurtured. They were part of us. They were part
Rather
of the
than
community.
dominant
Separate.
oppressor.
Exactly. So in rhythm with each other, in community, in rhythm with Mother Nature. So to have someone in their midst who was wounded in some way, to cast them aside would be like having your arm cut and not wanting to repair it. Oh, that thing, I'll just leave that over there and it can take care of itself. No, we're on this planet to take care of each other. I just have this vision of when there's a group of animals in nature or a group of birds, if you watch them closely, because we're always in awe of, they all move at the same time, seemingly. But if you watch them closely, if there's antelope in a field, it's when the 51st percentage turns its head.
Mm-hmm.
And when the 51st percentage turns its head in that direction, they all run.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where we're at right now. We're building that. And when the 51st percentage on planet Earth is ready to turn their head in the direction of a goddess culture, then the Earth will be healed.
Back to what you
That's
said
beautiful.
about embodying it ourselves, which is so critical right now to get to that 51st percentage.
You know, just I was thinking that the deck was stacked to make all the divinity be inside of the male dominion. You know, like the deck gets stacked. I mean, it's written right in the Genesis story in a way that you know, when the blame and the shame and the fault falls on women, and then it's taken, the divinity, the aspect of the divinity is taken away. It gives so much power and credence to places that don't, that should not have that. And so we're arriving to a place right now where this memory is, you know, it's throughout us. It's time for it to be known. And to do that, I think it's very hard because, you know, I was taught by one of my teachers not to take away or challenge somebody's deepest belief systems. And so to have this conversation, to have this dialogue, I mean, this is a place where people were killed to have this conversation. And there's still a threat. When I first came to the goddess as an entity, because I had no stories, I had nothing. There was no blueprint that this was what was true. And so I was brought up in Christianity, and I came to an unfortunate suffering moment that we do in humanity that brought me to a very hard choice in my life that held grief and sadness. What was in my heart was grief, absolute grief, and shame, because there was nothing in the culture that would really support me, that it's okay to let go, to release. So I was alone, and I found myself with a yellow magic marker and a black one and a piece of paper, and I don't usually draw. And I depicted myself on my hands and knees towards like a sun god. And so here I was, you know, making myself, and I think there was orange too, and I was like just imploring this God to forgive me, to, you know, like, please help me. You know, I've just gone through this terrible thing. I'm so sad, and I'm so, you know, I'm so broken, and I'm so ashamed, and I'm so hurt. And I was imploring this sun, basically the sky god, and the sky god was, I'm making it myself, and the sky god was just looking at me with this despicable judgment and shame, just looking down on me like, you know, and out of that, this night came, and these tendrils of black came, and the tendrils of black, now, you know, this could be thought of as like, oh, she's in evil, she's in darkness, she's in blackness, she's in devilness, but, you know, these black came, and it curled all the way underneath me, and it held me from the bottom, and it went inside of me, and as that face emerged, maybe there was a red magic marker, as the face emerged, it was one of the mother, and it was one of compassion, and I couldn't see her. I didn't know she existed, but she was already holding me. And this level of what we need for humanity in this moment, like, I don't so much care. I mean, I think when we have the religion talk, God, goddess, it just separates us more. What I care is that we're responsible for each divinity in every little tiny cell of us, in life in us, that then gets to unfold us in our humanity, where we've been shamed, where we've hurt, where we've been hurting, and be able to say, I am here with you and for you. And the responsibility then for each of us to embody that in our soul being, our intelligence, our compassion, our heart, and to go forward to be the living embodiment, to do that holding to humanity at this exact moment, to say, you may not be able to see me, but I don't blame you and I don't shame you, and I hold you and I love you and I'm here. And to be able to do that, whether it's with my brothers or my sisters, I want to be that embodiment. I want to look in the eyes of every being, animal, plant, anything, and be able to say, I am here and I love, and it's hard and it takes courage, but I'm here. And that's, that was my first real glimmerings of something's going on here that's a secret.
Right.
That's an amazing, amazing story.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. We all come to this table with wisdom and experience, and everyone at this table is a teacher. Everyone here teaches. And you can phrase it as your mission, you can phrase it as, what do you want to empower women of the world with? What do you want them to know most?
Taking that breath in and feeling your aliveness, just remembering that we are she and she is we, and that we are creatrixes here in this garden of life. And that the paradox that you presented of how life creates life, yet life needs to feed on life. That if we just come back to recognizing that we're divine and breathe into it a little bit and embody it, as Kiana said, in our daily life, then it's one step and one slither in front of another.
What I want is for women to know that this is our moment, this is our time. And I would like the men who love us and support us to understand that what is in them to nurture, to love, to hold, to be in compassion, to find a kind of fierce love is also needs to find a way in them. And I don't want this to be, I don't want this information, it can come in a startle, for there to be defense, but rather for us to find it, that in this moment right now, we need new paradigm, that sometimes is the ancient paradigm, that can hold this life with great love and care, without blame and shame, and to do what needs to be done in this moment, to care for life and our future. And this means going beyond what our culture has actually asked of us, and to be brave enough and courageous enough to come back to something that is deeper than that. It's almost like the seed knows to become the tree, the flower knows to become the apple, and the women of this age, the women of this time, know that if something is going to happen that is going to shift anything in the balance right now, it is up to us. And that's what I want us to know, to take responsibility for that. Call it anything you like.
I would like for all women to know that you have a right to yourself, you have a right to your thoughts, you have a right to be who you truly are, and you can access enormous power through the spirit that we're calling the goddess, who is there and surprisingly available to you if you just look for her.
Thank you, Margaret.
Well, my mission is to help women to reclaim their body as a temple, because I know, and all women here know, that when we are in our body and present, we know the goddess, we know where we're going, we have that confidence, and all it takes is us to be in there, and it's a simple thing, and all it takes is a difficult thing. And what I hold for women, and my mission is to support it any way I can, doing it, myself doing it in collaboration, however that gets out there, is for women to be able to have that sense of safety, to share the skill set for them to create the safety in their body that an ideal womb would have, where it is safe for them to feel everything they're feeling, to express everything, for them to be themselves. That's what I wish for women.
My wish is for women. It's also for humanity. And that's that we remember that we're all connected. We are all connected. We're connected in this room. We can feel each other's energies. When we spend time in nature, We can feel the energy of a tree. One of my first teachers, Lady Orvain in California, taught me with a simple houseplant. It doesn't take a great deal of effort. It doesn't take a great deal of time. It just takes presence. And for me, to bring it that close, to connect with a tree or flower or baby or pet or your lover or your daughter, and then know that it expands so far out. Feel connected to everyone, and that's what I want us to remember and know.
Thank you.
My wish for everyone who is joining us in this conversation is that we need you desperately. We need you as much as we need to breathe and be the divinity within ourselves. We need that from our audience that's joining us. You matter, you count. Life force comes in, and then we're created this individual expression that's never existed before in time and never will again, and then it'll go onward. But in the moment while it's spiraling in us, there's something happening here, and it's beautiful, and there's things that want to come out and want to be shared, and I just beseech all of us to do that, because if you do that, then it's a great gift to me. If you do it, I receive. So that's what I wish for everyone. You matter so much. That's the big thing.